Hey, Bill.
Hey man.
Bill Wilson here, the developer of the AI for PI index within LawShift. Um, yeah, I just want to get right into it. We're talking about this week's updated index, the AI for PI index, and the insights we're gleaning from it, the data that we're seeing, and we just want to chop it up for 10 minutes to take a look and see if what we're seeing aligns, the questions that are coming up, because there always seems to be questions that come up
Yeah, absolutely. Every week.
every week. So if you want to share your screen, we'll show the index
Yeah,
for
yeah.
this week. It was updated on Monday as usual, and this week was 7/13, Monday the 13th.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
So Bill, just right off the top, the typical visibility seems to be falling,
hmm
but is that because we're now using a 4 week rolling average?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so when we think about a firm, let me just go back to here. When we think about a firm um, and what their, any firm that is mentioned, what is their sort of typical visibility? And so we do this by basically making sure that we only look at firms that have actually been mentioned in a city pair, and we look at least two of those, and then we just go, okay, cool. Like, where would they naturally fall? And the vast majority of firms are just invisible, and I think
AI
that's that's,
invisible.
that's what we're trying to highlight here. There's very few that really show up across that. So that would be the median visibility in the markets they're mentioned in. This isn't national, like this is in the markets they're mentioned in. That would
Wow.
be their median visibility. So basically, the most likely visibility. Now that doesn't mean there aren't people in there with like massive visibility scores. It just means like if you're a Joe Blow law firm in a metropolitan area, say Boston, and you've done nothing, chances are that's going to be roughly where you land.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So before we move on, Sarkeesian is a Lost Shift client. Absolutely love to see them as the top movers of the week. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 259 markets covered. Those are metro areas, city names, basically town names. I mean, 259 that covers most. I
Yeah,
guess mid to bigger size
yeah, it covers
places.
all of the DMAs and also several other pockets that had showed up as fairly active in the PI space.
Awesome.
Over time, we might actually consolidate these into a bit smaller of a subset to make it a little more reasonable to find. Where people are competing, because the metros are kind of where things kind of roll up to.
Yeah, fantastic. So, what is this to you? And I'll chime in as well. I'll probably say the same exact thing. But what does this to you mean for personal injury firms?
The current state of the
Yeah,
visibility.
I know we've already said most people are AI
Yeah, I
invisible.
mean,
Like, how could they use this? What is the opportunity? What is the challenge? Like, what do you think off the top of your head for personal injury firms that are seeing this?
yeah, I think any personal injury firm are seeing this. It really should really, well, I guess it's I don't want to say it's a wake up call, but it should be a bit of a, a flashlight shone in a corner they didn't want to shine. It's this idea that, oh, we aren't actually showing up in this up and coming space that's everybody's already using, whether they like it or not. People do a Google search, they're using AI, like it shows up in
Mm.
Google AI overviews, all these things, and they're just not participating. And I think the big thing to take away is, like, if I'm a personal injury law firm, I'm looking at this going, well, I'm already spending a ton on marketing. Why aren't we showing up here? And I think
Hmm.
that is the real question I would be asking if I was a PI law firm, is like, how do we show up here? Because arguably what's happening now is there's a ton of conversation happening well before they even find a lawyer. Like, that's
Mm.
what the AI is good at. It's really great at talking to you, and people need to talk. And so the injured, when they show up, they're talking, and this is who they're talking to at the beginning, at least.
Yeah,
Besides,
so that's what we were talking about a little bit before. I couldn't agree more, but we were talking a little bit about the prompts and how we're looking. Our goal is to cover the entire pre-intake window of time from injury all the way to intake, and to see how people are interacting with AI um, ever before they even probably think about calling a lawyer or about a legal case. They're in an accident, they're injured, they have medical bills piling up, or the insurance adjuster's calling. So they're talking to AI about a lot of different things, not just like, hey, who's the best attorney in my space? So within that pre-intake window and the prompts that we're checking, um, what I've seen is that most of the people are recommended, albeit not recommended. Like it doesn't recommend firms that often. Is that only when you're asking like a very specific type of question, like give me a lawyer, like you're pressing the AI for a recommendation. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a series of questions that an injured person's going to ask, right? Because at the very beginning, they're like, "Look, do I like what should I do? I just had a car accident in San Antonio or wherever it is. Like, what should I do?" Almost the very first thing that most of the LLMs are going to recommend is that you are safe and that you're healthy and all of those kinds of things. So it's mostly worried about your well-being at the very beginning. Now, the LLMs differ on this a little bit. Some of them will come right out of the gate and make recommendations. But often in the beginning, it's more about general advice, right? Go get help. It might even say talk to a lawyer, but it's not necessarily going to recommend a lawyer, that kind of thing. So at the very, very beginnings of the conversation, it's more about information. And it's one thing that LLMs are really good at is it's got the world's corpus of information in its head, and it can sort of spit out some advice, whether within its guardrails. And so then, but as you go further down that conversation, you start asking like, look, I was in a hit and run in, downtown Dallas, and I need a lawyer. Like if you ask that question as part of your conversation, you're almost certainly going to start getting the AI recommending. And I say recommending because they often do recommend firms.
Yeah, and now we're seeing some don't. Some will say like, I really can't recommend a lawyer. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it as much. Now, keep in mind, I look at like 26,000 responses a week. So
Yeah.
I haven't seen it a ton myself, but I definitely, through analysis of these, it does show up periodically. And it depends on the LLM, honestly.
Yeah.
And I will say too, like the LLMs, and this might be a separate conversation, but the LLMs will often just repeat whatever the law firm has said in terms of.
Yeah, that was one of our big findings this week, actually.
It's crazy if it like says we're the best, blah 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 blah. Like the LLM is probably going to submit back. It's like, hey, this firm is widely recognized as the best, blah blah, like almost verbatim what it says on its own website.
Right.
So
even with Morgan and Morgan saying they're the largest law firm in America, PI firm in America, yes, we see that very often, but nobody's, I don't think, validated or even disputed it. But the AIs are saying like, this is the biggest law firm in America, so you should, maybe we should take a look at them.
I can prove that one because they show up in every single in almost every single market. But yes,
right,
100%. I think that's it. Like the LLMs, we got to remember how they work. They're about predicting the next thing and applying some basic guidance and rules. And so if the information it has over and over and over again is that this firm is the best whatever based on their own marketing, and that's how it's referred to everywhere else on the internet, then that's what it's going to say because it trusts that information. And that's the biggest thing here is trust. Mm-hmm.
What's crazy to me is that we're finally at a point where differentiation really matters. Because if you're saying the same exact thing as everyone else, like we've been saying it since the beginning, how is AI going to be able to distinguish you from the next firm that's saying exactly the same thing verbatim, like, aggressive advocacy and we fight for you. And so if it's something unique, even if it's a claim, even if it's unverified, quite frankly, the AI is repeating it back to us as a fact.
Yeah, as a fact. And I think it's a really great opportunity.
And not citing it either.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes not even citing it. I would say there's a really great opportunity for firms now to truly lean into their authentic voice about things. Now, I know authentic has been taken over by the influencer market, but I mean, I really mean it. Like, what is it you actually believe in? What is your point of view on the market? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you care about? Why did you get into this in the first place? Right? As a firm. So you start telling that story, that's going to start showing up more.
Yeah.
You can't keyword your stuff. You can't keyword stuff your way into AI recommendations.
Interesting.
You just can't. Like, you have to be out there. You have to be referenced. You have to be trusted. People have to be talking about it. People have to be linking back to you, which is, everybody says, oh, backlinks, but that's the old game. But still, like in a more contextual way, it's not just looking for the backlink. It's looking for, oh, it's referencing this and this is what it's saying. Like, what is the sentiment and how is it being discussed? Those are the things that the LLMs are looking into. And now I'm sounding like I'm very authoritative on that. It's just, this is what we're observing. right? Because the other thing is these LLMs are massive number of parameters, huge models. They're non-deterministic by nature. So we're not necessarily going to know exactly how they work, but what we can do is observe what happens when we ask the questions over and over again, week after week, and start spotting those trends and changes. And I think that's going to be the light that nobody else has right now.
Yeah, this is the first of its kind. I think in any industry, the AI for PI index. But what this reminds me of is back in when we were doing SEO and optimizing for Google and ranking in Google. I joined. So there was a bunch of just nonsense online about what works and what doesn't work, and it was all theory, and none of it was really tested. So I found this group back in the day, the SEO Intelligence Agency. There was like a small group of kind of misfits that like considered themselves testers. And what we would do is we would put up 10 pages on a made up Latin term, right? So we would take up the whole 10 spots and they were all exactly the same. But then we would change one variable so we can see how they reordered the rankings for that made up term. Mm-hmm. And so this gave us like tremendous amount of like actual data to say like, no, Google doesn't care about that. Like you can even see that it demoted it or it had no change, right? Some things we couldn't determine if it was, non-deterministic, as you call it. Like we couldn't determine if it made a difference or it didn't. But that's what this reminds me of, is like, this is an even vaster world and knowledge base, if you can imagine that, than Google.
Yeah,
which is hard to imagine.
Whereas Google was the single source of truth and they had an algorithm for surfacing things. Now we're in a world of LLMs that are learning from their last cutoff date all the time. They're learning from the person who's asking the question and their own history with that particular LLM. Like, if you have your ChatGPT going and you've asked lots and lots of questions about this stuff over time, you're going to start to get different answers and so your history. So there's so many things that just make it almost impossible to, I don't want to say impossible to apply the scientific method, but you changing one variable is going to be a lot more harder to do in this space because we don't know what it's necessarily looking at.
Right.
So all we can really do is observe and then identify patterns. And so that's what we do. We sit down every week and we run, deep exploratory analysis on all the responses to understand what's changing, what's happening in the space, and how people are actually getting spoken about, sentiment and, what's showing up the most, and like all those kinds of things, to really just try and understand it from a outside in perspective, as opposed to trying to go a variable at a time and seeing what changes.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about like, the overarching and the theory of it all day. This is like really excites me, and getting into the data and to actually seeing what's happening. Our take is that the entire personal injury market forever has been focused on the very end of the pre-intake window for people that are like ready for a lawyer. And it's always been like a needle in a haystack, or like trying to catch a speeding bullet. And everyone in the market is in that same exact moment of time fighting for this valuable, what they call lead, which is a person. But, and our theory is that, with AI, our point of view is that AI will recommend a lawyer at the very end, but now it's joining a conversation. It's having a conversation with people from injury to intake without an attorney. And that's the point of time where people need an attorney most. So the sooner we can get an actual attorney in that window to reach these people and to help these people, for us, it'll be better for everyone. Like we've always thought about the 7%, that study by My Case that said 7% of people that raise their hand for a consultation actually attend and show up to a consultation. I think if we do nothing, that number goes down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because people,
they're getting their consultation.
Yeah,
and
they feel like they're getting a consultation.
Right. And what's really interesting about that is that if firms now take a point of view in the market and actually start talking about the things that the injured people really, really care about, they're going to start to get cited. They may not be mentioned, but their information, the way they think, their point of view about how the injured should handle this is going to start to show up earlier in the conversation. Which I think is really interesting. I'm not sure that's what's excited with that, but I find that really fascinating. Like that's how PI firms get further up the pre-intake funnel.
Yeah. Awesome. If we can go down, because we're going to have a couple more minutes here, but let's go section by section, just really quickly, seeing if there's anything that pops out at us. The biggest finding of the week, and you'll see it in the Insights article, was that most firms get named once and never again. Well, we'll go into this in a minute, but so we have I'll let you take over, the 25 most AI visible firms in all of America. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is the ones that show up the most across a national spectrum. So if someone's actually speaking to AI and asking questions, no matter what market they're in, whether it's San Antonio or Florida or Virginia, these are the ones that are showing up more and more. So they actually have a bit of a national footprint. Most firms are not national. But you can see there's a lot of firms here, like at the top here, like Morgan & Morgan, of course, Ben Crump, Cooper Hurley. These firms, like I think even Cooper Hurley, if we dig in, their best state is Virginia. So they're getting found across that national set, even though they're really only competing here. Where they're showing up. Now they show up in a lot of other places, right?
I see.
On varying weeks, they show up differently, but you can see they're mostly showing up here.
And those little dots, Bill, is that the weeks that they show up? Because sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. So the ones this is basically, they're very consistent. Every week, they're no matter what we ask, they're showing up in these markets. Some of the other ones where they showed up at the first 2 weeks we asked, but they haven't shown up since. In the middle 2 weeks, they showed up the first week, but never again. Those kinds of things. So we keep a rolling 4-week average going so we can really understand how things are changing for a particular firm, because one of the interesting things about the way that these AIs work is that the overlap of actual recommendations can change from run to run to run on an LM. You could ask hey, recommend me a lawyer in San Antonio, and it gives you a list of 5. You could ask that exact same question again and give you a different list of 5. And maybe the overlap is 25 to 30%. And so we measure that across weeks, not just like multiple runs, not just a single snapshot.
Yeah, smart.
That's what really helps us confidently say where a firm sits in the market. So, but with that, Nick, I really do have to go. I'm sorry, man. I've got another.
No, you're good. Okay? No, this was great. And we'll cover it again next week. Actually, the week after on video, but each week we'll be coming out with the AI for PI Insights article on Wednesdays, which is a couple of days after the index updates. And if you'd like to see how your firm is recommended, how you could use this information to increase revenue, we're calling it the AI for PI. No, I'm sorry. It's a new name for it, by the way. It's a pre-intake revenue strategy session, which is a mouthful. See how we can turn this into revenue for firms. Like, what does this mean for firms? How they can have a steady pipeline of new business and not inconsistent like traditional marketing. All right, Bill, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Talk soon. Bye.